I've been, I recently joined Google, and a good amount of time in the last year was spent trying to figure out the job market and how to transition into a different role. And today I'll be sharing some stories from my journey, and there are some learnings along the way I hope would be helpful and meaningful for you all today. Before we begin, maybe with a show of hands, who remembers what was the initial feeling when you decided to start looking for a new role in your journey? If you felt a bit anxious, nervous, please raise both your hands. And if you, oh wow, oh wow. And if you felt calm, confident, you know your shit, maybe you can wave your hand so that people can know to reach out to you. Ooh, great. There are few people. Nice. So I think, like most of you, all of you, in fact, I also had a very nervous, uncertain beginning. I wasn't sure where I was at. But throughout my journey, I went through many emotional phases and took different types of decisions along the way that helped me reach success. I'm going to share a little bit about my journey and the stories along the way. So the beginning was quite uncertain. I wasn't sure, you know, what is a meaningful role that where I can contribute. I also didn't know where I am at, like where are my skills. I didn't know my confidence level, or I didn't even have very clear career goals. But for that, I wanted to understand what's out there in the market, what are the opportunities. And I wanted to, there were a lot of job listings on LinkedIn and other places that I was scrolling, but I didn't know what to apply, where to apply. Um, which is where I shifted my perspective into trying to understand and being a bit more curious and a bit strategic about what company I want to apply and which role I should focus on. What I did at this stage was gathered all the job descriptions available out there and I ran a quick prompt. Um, I know they spoke a lot about AI and being careful, but I was using it to aggregate all the information into something meaningful that makes sense to me. Like, what are the keywords? What are companies looking for? And what are all the requirements that are there? This was very important because before this, when I'd applied to jobs, I was not getting any callbacks. But I did three things. I optimized how my resume was written, what are the keywords I was using. I was now able to apply to relevant positions because I was using the chat agent to summarize what are the job descriptions and what fits well with my portfolio and the kind of experience that I have. This was a great shift. I started getting callbacks and interview calls at this point. The interesting thing is you do get interview calls, but in my understanding, my portfolio was really good. Like I had a lot of case studies and there were too many things I wanted to present. But in reality, when I was going into those interviews, I was not able to complete like sharing my case studies. There would be questions, time would end, and I didn't know what to choose, what to talk about. Like there were just too many things. And at this stage, I tried to be more attentive. There were two things. One was understanding what are these companies that I'm interviewing for require. Like, it's one, being a good researcher, but another about being a great fit to that particular team. I wanted to understand what are the goals of hiring teams, why are they doing this interview, what kind of candidate they are looking for. Um, the initial rounds of interviews that there are those telephonic calls, I use them to the maximum to get all ask all sort of questions to understand what exactly the team requires and why they are hiring. Um, at the same time, I was also talking to a couple of mentors in the industry, other people who were interviewing, and I understood that there are some pain points that these teams also have. Like our portfolios are, to be honest, very generic. Like there are so many research studies that we have, and I don't know, we pick, I think Prachi spoke about how researchers are selfish. I felt I was so selfish. I was not able to see beyond it. Like my work was too important. And Ripple mentioned that nobody cares about your insights except yourself. And I cared about all the insights that I had and all my stories to share. So it was sort of a confusion. Like I had generic portfolios. At the same time, it was also important to understand the amount of time hiring teams spend in choosing this one person they will hire. We often tend to like forget the other side of the story, that for me, the 1 hour I get is very important because I have applied for like 30 job interviews and I'm getting one. But that team is interviewing 30 people at the same time. And it's important to account for their time as well. Um, I can't read the last point. Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes like forgetting what the role requires and still applying to that job. Like there's sort of a mismatch that happens. These are some of their pain points. What this understanding helped me was creating portfolio or case study presentations that are more streamlined. I understood initially that there are a lot of business goals that need to be aligned through research. Like I had case studies where, since it was my portfolio, I wanted to talk more about all the insights I have rather than the ones business picked and why. And probably that's not how the industry works. Also, being more clear in terms of the stories I present, but also how they match to metrics. I mean, we do need to account for what kind of impact it's happening to either business or the user, and trying to showcase more adaptability. Like a lot of places that I gave interviews for were quite confused as to if we put you in a complex environment, how would you do? They don't have a lot of, they have different types of stakeholders and are unsure how you will perform there. So case study presentation is one of the interview rounds which I feel the job seeker has complete control because you are driving the narrative. All the other interviews are question led, where the interviewer asks questions and you have to answer them. So I was trying to make most of this 1 hour that I get and trying to showcase all of these things through the portfolio that I create. Um, so yeah, interviews were going well and everything, but I still wasn't aware as to how I'm doing because there were a lot of interviews happening. And at this point, it was also hard to keep a track of all of them. Um, it becomes very difficult because there are multiple rounds happening over a period of time. So I've forgotten who I had spoken to and now who I'm speaking to next. So yeah, I did what as a researcher I love doing. I created an Excel to track everything that I was doing, to keep schedules, who I'm speaking to, contacts, what did I speak about, which case study I showcased, what were the open questions that they had. I've blurred out, this is my Excel. I was also capturing feedback from each round that I got. What were the open questions that kept coming? What kind of questions are coming? I was also tracking what kind of organization this is that I've interviewed for. Um, this helped me to, one, track status and follow-ups. Like I knew what I spoke about last time, what questions they had asked. So now in the next round, I try and figure out anecdotes to talk about or examples pulled out from my sleeves to then use them and give better examples. But I also use this to identify some patterns and open questions, like what are some of the questions that I repeatedly get asked. And it was a great tool for self-assessment as to how I'm improving over time. This was sort of my introspection phase, but it also was a phase when was giving a lot of interviews, but there was no conversion. There was conversion rate of zero, basically, because there was no offer. There were only lots and lots of interviews. And yeah, at this point, from my sheet, I started summarizing and analyzing what is happening. I felt that there is one size does not fit all. I was using the same case study in all the interviews I was going to. But I probably need to iterate a bit more. One of my takeaway or insight was that there are companies which are more emerging or agency format. Um, they are looking for case studies which are able to showcase business impact or stakeholder buy-in. But there are large organizations who want to know the depth and breadth of your research skill set, but also how you collaborate with multiple teams. How do you work across different functions where you are placed? So the portfolio was similar, like the presentation was same, but the narrative was changed in a way that I'm able to highlight those differently. And that sort of iterative nature helped me to go through the final stage of then um, landing an offer at least. So in reflection, like this was just like the whole journey, but in reflection, I feel that when we are conducting research, we are also doing a similar fashion of activities. And while we are doing it for ourselves, like while going on a job hunt, we don't really think about doing the same things that have been tested and proven and is actually our job profile. So I think it's important to wear your researcher hat and bring that mindset in when you go out there looking for a job to gather data, understand what's out there, what are the opportunities, but also empathize with your users because your portfolio's users are the hiring managers and teams that are going to like bring you in, but also analyze all that data, your feedback, self-assessment, and probably have an iterative nature to close the loop. So I hope this journey of uncertainty to success inspires you as well to probably use the research mindset. Um, as a Thank you. As a giveaway, here's the sheet that I used. You can copy, make a version of it, and hope this is helpful. Thank you so much. I promised I was short. In my research or whatever little I've read, I don't think I was applying to companies that are using ATS friendly. Yeah, so it depends on what you're doing and where you're applying. Um, yeah, any other questions? Or chai is the answer? Yes. Um, I was feedback, as in it was not a very direct feedback, but feedback in the form of what questions are they asking, and probably the reason why they would be asking those questions. Like, for example, um, if a question is getting raised that will you be able to handle a very complex domain, which means my portfolio or is not able to express that I have the ability to work on a complex domain, for example. So that was a feedback that I took. But also in most interviews, if you have some few minutes left, interviewers would open up to asking you to ask questions. I always make sure that I ask questions because it helps you to understand what they require, especially in the initial phase of the interview before you go into a portfolio presentation. That is like the data gathering time because they will tell you a lot of keywords like we are looking for somebody who can work in fast-paced environment, which means that their researches are happening in much more continuous fashion and are looking for somebody to do a lot of different types of work, for example. So then how do I take that insight and showcase or curate a case study that helps them see that? Yeah, something like that. Thank you.